Okay, Dr. Lauterbach, would you like to go ahead and kick us off today?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The Faculty Council is continuing our Hawk Talk presentations, and today's presentation is from one of our College of Business and Technology faculty, Dr. Sanchari Ghosh. She's an economics faculty here, and her presentation is titled The Economics of Water Trading in the Western United States. And in response to severe droughts in western U.S., water trading has emerged as a popular market-based instrument. And so she's going to share with us statistical evidence to show that long-term leases and sales of water have a prominent impact upon the volume of water transfer. And of course, this is work supported by a summer grant provided by the Faculty Research Council a couple of years ago. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Dr. Ghosh to enlighten us about the economics of water trading.
Thank you, Dr. Lauterbach. And okay, so today's lunch presentation is about water trading and some of the economics behind it. So I will probably kind of give a brief overview of water trading, what it means economically and financially speaking. But I will try to focus, because it's a 1-hour presentation, on the particular research project I had done on water trading in the Western US based on the summer grant I received in 2016. So without any delay, something about water markets. So let's consider it as any other market like we talk about. So economic principles of market means that you are trying to efficiently allocate resources. So more precisely, you are just trying to put some resource to its highest value. Now, if that's the simple microeconomic logic of markets, that's also applied to Western United States and many other countries in the world. In fact, I mentioned Spain, Chile, Australia, Middle East, some of the other areas, regions around the world where water trading has been popular for the last 3 decades. One thing you may notice that Western United States, along with all those regions, happen to be very arid or dry regions. So some of the prominent water markets in Western United States, the Drought Water Bank in California first came up in 1991-92 in response to the massive California droughts during that decade. We had the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District has been trading water for decades. And of course, across the border in Texas, water trading models are quite sophisticated. So what are the different types of water trading? I thought I would spend one slide on that, but for paucity of time, I kind of ticked away some of the different, because it's a vast and elaborate discussion of how many water trading instruments we can have. But I just summarized as some of the more popular instruments. We either lease or rent water for a year or two, and I'm going to elaborate on these when we discuss spot markets for water. We sell or transfer the water rights. So basically, you sell your rights to water permanently to someone else. Now, water banking has been a possibility, and I have done work on water banking extensively, and it has become very popular across Western United States as well as in many areas of Spain and I think Australia. And right now, I don't have a working relationship, but I'm kind of affiliated with the Water Institute at East Central University, where they are doing the aquifer storage and recovery model. So basically, some parts of Oklahoma are not as endowed with water as we are. So they are trying to scientifically and economically try to figure out the costs of storing water in big aquifers. And then there is the process of water wheeling. It's just very much in practice in Texas, where water is actually, groundwater can also be transported from one region to another. So these things are just some of the prominent ways in which water marketing has been going on. And basically it has been proved, and why the importance of these kind of research is water trading has actually benefited us, has actually raised economic welfare. And when you say economic welfare, obviously we have to attribute some dollar value to it. So in California, for example, one of our biggest states, and also one of the most arid states of Western United States, we have almost 5% of the water is traded water or going through water markets. Again, I will elaborate on the direction of trade. It can be from farmers to municipalities, municipalities to environmental agencies, etc., etc. And the water markets in Australia happen to be one of the most sophisticated water markets in the whole world. And United States actually look up to Australia in many ways, water trading. So they have run into billions of Australian dollars in terms of trading. Obviously, Australia is all desert, not like us where we still have water in some parts. So a little bit of some of the different aspects to consider in water trading. And obviously, I can take questions if people have some problems with this kind of notation. So some of these aspects are like kind of interrelated concepts that may affect water markets or trading. You can have the first one that comes to your mind right away are institutions, water rights. Water rights meaning that in its, I'm sure many of the people are not aware, like if you do not really are working, if you're not really working on water and water rights, is that in Western United States, we follow the rule of prior appropriation, meaning that whoever has the first rights to water has gotten the water. So back in 1800s, when there was the gold rush, many people came over, and the mining people were the first settlements who got most of the rights to water. Then came the irrigation people. And finally, after the cities grew up from the 1940s and 50s, they have the water rights. So obviously the cities have the least priority. Most of the cities come lower in priority than the farmers and everyone else. Then that's about water rights and institutional governance. We have the economic impacts of water marketing, which means that we just imply that, well, if you are transferring water from one place to another, what happens to the volume of water in that region? This has been an issue in many parts of Texas and in California. We have spatial temporal linkages. It's more in groundwater and surface water interlinkages. If your groundwater and surface water being connected, what happens? And there are lots of interdisciplinary studies. We cannot just apply economics here. We have to really take the help of sophisticated hydrological and physical models to solve these problems. And of course, the economics again kicks in when we have third-party externalities and costs involved. Third-party externalities meaning that, well, the water markets really affect other agencies. So for example, if you are selling, if you are a farmer, let's say I'm a farmer selling to a municipal agency, what are the repercussions of other farmers around the area if that water is transported to the city? So these are some of the third-party externalities that I'm talking about. And so water markets have to be monitored and enforced. Right? So it's a strictly regulated market. It's not as sophisticated as financial markets, but it's getting there. And I have heard like people in Manhattan have also been interested in investing in water, which is a big deal in California. So which is a big deal about talking about markets. So instead of talking elaborately about markets, again, I will just focus on that paper, as I said, on that particular project where I will figure where the Western United States become the most important part of water markets in my research here. And some of the there, like if you go through the literature on water markets, you can just empirically classify them into three broad types of literature. One of these types of water markets are actually very complex. You have, as I was saying, you're actually modeling the hydrology and the economics together. That sophisticated modeling has been used. As you can see, all those names, they are mostly people from California. And when I started doing this research, I had to read bundles of papers from there because this UC Davis, UC Berkeley, and Santa Barbara, they have done so much on their sophisticated water markets that, and their modeling is very scientific as well as economic. Now, one of the better ways to model it, where I don't have to work with a lot of scientists in the picture, is like just doing the statistical and econometric modeling of water markets. And that is what the simpler picture I will show today, some of the statistical impact of water markets in Western United States. So as you can see, Katrina Hansen, she has been doing a lot of work on these, and she also has been able to include institutional governance in water markets, meaning that how prior appropriation versus other what kind of institutions affect water markets. And obviously, one of the most prominent conclusions in these studies is, this is coming up, that all these papers and lots of other papers have figured out one thing, and this is very important in economics. When we are talking about markets or trading, be it financial markets like the New York Stock Exchange or any other markets across the world, we assume that the prices should converge somewhere so the seller and the buyer can trade with some known prices. What has happened though is like, well, there has been there's a substantial amount of intersectoral divergence in prices, meaning that if the city of Los Angeles may be paying millions of dollars for some water rights, whereas an agriculture farmer trading with, let's say, the Oklahoma Water Resources Board may not be paying that. Basically, mostly the water trading goes on from the farmers to other people because, as I said, irrigation and all these, they have the highest rights to water, or they have the senior rights to water. So most of them sell to other agencies. So there is a lot of price dispersion going on in these markets. So most of our conclusion is about all these, and I will not repeat these. All of our conclusions have, on all these studies, have been about these prices paid, the different types of prices paid by municipal agencies to the agriculture farmers, to environmental agencies, etc. But what stands out is the transaction cost. By transaction cost, I mean, like if we happen to compare these and compare and contrast these water markets to, let's say, a stock exchange, you have the brokers, you have everything done there, everything is set, and very computerized and very sophisticated trading going on. Here, the problem has been, which Western United States is still trying to solve, is how much do you pay to brokerage? There are brokerage commissions also involved. There are sophisticated markets coming up in a few states, but trading has been rare over there because they are very computerized. Understanding those markets is not a cup of tea. So one problem has been this cost, the transaction cost. Another problem is the prices, as I said, as I just mentioned, for certain sectors have been high. And so the cities, they are not unhappy, because if you're talking about cities like Denver in Colorado, or we are talking about cities like Los Angeles, they have lots of money to pay for water. But what has been the contention though is like some of the agricultural farmers are these days are not agreeing to sell their water, unlike previous days. I don't know if some of you watched that movie. It was like a long 50 or 60 years back. It was, I think, in Chinatown. It's about the city of Los Angeles stealing water from, it showed in the movie. But anyways, so that's how it started, and the cities became so accustomed to receiving water, but now many things are coming up in terms of economic costs. And there are droughts, and in Texas, for example, the farmers are not ready to sell water, and there has been many other things going on. And you may have seen pictures on YouTube and in some funny videos how the ranchers are standing with their rifles and protecting their land because the federal government may take away their water. So this has been the thing with water over the past. So, but why is this important? I'm still on the introduction here though, but why is this, what is this thing, where does this thing feature most in our daily life? The problem is the drought. And all of us know that Texas had droughts. California had multiple droughts. The latest was in 2016 when I was doing this research. So it helped me collect a little bit of data on that. And obviously, it has been shown in multiple studies that water trading has mitigated drought impacts, meaning that obviously there has been, and this is also what my results will show today, but there have been very recent studies I read, like this 2016 study in the California study by Recknack et al. They are saying that droughts may not be the most significant factor that is leading to water trade, which may be true because many cities just need water for their development. And that's why you will see in my data set I've included some states which have a population of cities who need water. So what are the different contributions of these projects that I am focusing on, which is different from previous studies? One of the things that previous studies focused too much on was on price dispersion. There have been lots done on these. So I'm focusing on the volume of water being traded. This is important because volume or the quantity of water being traded is directly correlated with the markets. Is the market evolving over time? What is the trade? Is the volume of water being traded across the United States increasing? By United States, I mostly mean the Western United States. And again, I have focused on 4 prominent Western states which have accounted for almost 60% of water trades. These are California, Texas, Arizona, and Colorado. When I was looking at the data set, they happen to have the maximum number of transactions over my data set, my study period. And I'm also focusing separately on leases as well as sales. I'm going into that distinction again in a moment. So, so this is just a picture overview of some of the drought intensity. These are some of the severe, extreme, and exceptional droughts. It comes from, and I will show the data source. It comes from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration published drought monitor indices. They publish these every year, especially during that summertime. They have lots of maps coming up. And so what we did was, like me with my student, we kind of looked at some of these drought intensities and classified them as, dummy variables. One, if the drought intensity is exceptional drought. As you can see in some of these bar charts, the bar diagrams over here, most of the extreme and exceptional droughts have been coincident, meaning most of these states had exceptional droughts with the same years as we can classify them as extreme droughts. Now, exceptional droughts have been rare. I mean, exceptional means that they have been, according to their index, the drought was ravaged the states. Right? That scenario. Only Texas had an exceptional drought in, I think, I'm sorry about the vertical axis, in at least 5 or 6 years of our study time, Texas had more of exceptional droughts. Now, even though we kind of talked so much about California, the California did not have as much exceptional droughts as in Texas. And I will mention here that some of my friends from Texas actually mentioned that over the last few years, some cities in Texas have been selling water because of these kind of exceptional droughts. They know about it. It's interesting to know that this is happening across the border. So a little bit of math here and analysis. What I'm doing very simple. This is structural equation, which is actually relating what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, I have this drought intensity, which is really affecting my trades, water trades. So why not look at drought affecting the volume of water traded? Okay, how much water is being transacted because there has been a severe or exceptional drought. Okay, so you can create dummy variables and kind of tease out that part. I have to put price. Price always affects the volume. It's kind of a demand quantity model. It's like, we all know how markets work. If you want that your demand is higher or the volume is higher, that is going to affect the price, right? You have to pay higher price. So that's why Los Angeles and Denver, I was mentioning, they end up paying higher price because their demand is higher. The term LDK, and all these are just notations to show, refers to lease duration. And LJ represents lease. So water leasing is like this. Let's say I am a farmer and Karen here is a city. She's a municipal agency. And both of us are negotiating. So I will be selling water to her, but I have decided I will just sell it for a year. I can do it, so I can do it for 1 year, this year 2019, let's say, and I can do it until 2020 or for 5 years. But I'm not permanently selling my water rights to her, okay? Which is different from sales of water rights, which you do not see here in this equation, because I just took them as dummy variables. I said, okay, lease is 1, so sales will be 0. If you put a dummy variable in your model, 1 being 1 will actually pick up the sales effect. So if your mathematical impact of 0 is more, I'm talking about sales. Okay? So cells do not, so if you have a dummy variable, you do not have to put the 2 variables together in your model. So that's how I followed it. So this is what is going on. There is a cell going on and there is an lease going on. So studies have concluded that leases are more popular these days. I do not contend, but I will show you the results where cells have been important in my case. So, and we have to always put the random error term and a time-specific variable because, I took 10 years of data So 10 to 13 years of data actually, but I got very little observations from 2010 until 13. So I will just say 10 or 11 years of data. So because and then I had to put a time trend to capture the time. Okay, so the problem is this. I will go back here. As I just explained, price and quantity is a demand model, right? If you have higher quantity of water being sold, the price of water has to go up, and vice versa. So the problem here is this one. I don't know if where my cursor is. These two variables on one side of a single equation are being solved simultaneously, meaning that it creates biased estimates in statistical sense. You have price affecting volume, volume affecting price. So if Karen wants less water from me, I will sell her at a lower price and vice versa. So this is a problem in econometrics and statistics. So I have to correct that by not using that econometric model, but using two other structural models, an instrumental variable approach, which has become very popular for correcting. It is called an instrumental variable approach. Is just estimating that structural equation which I just showed you with two other decomposed forms. So what I'm saying, okay, let's go back to this equation. Let me put an instrument. We call this an instrument. An instrument called per capita income. Okay, per capita income will affect one variable but not the other. Let's look at this. Per capita income is the income of a particular city. Okay, the median income level of Denver is higher than any other agency. So obviously that will affect the prices they're going to offer, right? It's same with two of us transacting water. But income will not affect the volume needed, because remember, volume is a demand. How much water do I need this year? That is not affected by how much income I make, right? But it will definitely affect the price. So per capita income serves as a very good instrument for price. So in that way, and this has been used only I was very surprised that such big economists worked on this model, but only two or three previous studies really took the instrumental variable approach. So my entire equation is now decomposed into the log income, and I don't want to go into the mathematics of all these. This is more for the paper purposes, but the notations again, log income, and I had to take logarithms of each because the data was just so widely dispersed, and prices and volume, they are in dollar terms, big numbers, so I have to always correct it by taking logarithms. So I take the log income and the log prices, and I take the log volume, etc., etc. And what happens with these instrumental variable approaches, you solve a set of two simultaneous equations. So the first equation, you throw in the income, you solve for price. Okay. So statistically, in the statistical software, I got the estimates for price. Then you got the estimates for price, and the software will do everything for you if you just do the right coding. You throw in the price, and then the price estimated solves for the quantity. So traditionally, economists say that this problem, and this was an instrument that was invented almost 70 or 80 years back. So the same demand and supply equation. They say that, well, if you take the estimated value of the instrument, the estimated value of the problem being that price will affect volume, and volume will also affect price. Why not take that estimated value of price and put it in the volume equation? After the instrument called income has taken off all the pies. Okay. So why is this so important? Why am I going through the mathematics a little bit? Is because if I didn't do this, I cannot claim my results are really statistically significant, or I could not publish this. So the problem is here. People always catch you if you do these biased estimates statistically. So this is the basic framework I'm using. Talking about this paper, this is the only instrumental variable regression I performed, and there is another estimation I did at the end. So some of the data sources, in case you're interested, obviously these big data set, I think I had lots of observations. I'm just forgetting, we'll see that in a minute, around 1,000 observations from how much water trading and price of transactions. Now, the University of California at Santa Barbara, they maintain a website on this. on all the, so I really just, one of the, my favorite things was just to download that data in Excel, and then me and my student, we teased out some of these important variables from here. And now, what was problematic though was going through the other data sources, the years of drought severity. I already mentioned to you how we collected it. And then we had the state level population data, because you may understand that population also affects demand for water. Income per capita, Bureau of Economic Analysis, and housing prices. I threw in housing prices for a reason. And this needs some attention. I was doing these, I think last summer or the summer before that, I was going through this data set. And one of the things I saw in my data set is like Colorado had a lot of cells. And over time, from 2000 to 2030, the time period of my transactions of all this data, I figured out that Colorado had a lot of cells of water, meaning actual transfer of water rights. So what was happening? I looked back into they have actual data on which agency sold to which agency. So a lot of them were actual municipal agencies like cities. And why do cities need water? Population is exploding. Housing development have been really high in Colorado. Okay, so I looked up some studies, and then it confirmed my suspicion that, well, housing prices do affect water price. So I also threw in the housing price variable. Okay, the reason we do these all statistically is because the more variables we throw in, and I have a lot of observations, so the more variables I'm throwing in, I am just letting my estimates be more efficient statistically. So that's why I'm like, and it's also economically makes sense because housing price, population, etc. affect the demand for water. So this is just an overview of all the variables here. I will not describe everything in details, but you can see these variable depicts whether the transfer is a lease or not. So as I said, it is a dummy variable. One signifies if it's a lease, 0 signifies whether it is a sale. Now again, for lease, I had to kind of classify them into 3 categories, including the cells. Now leases have been not just 1 year. As I mentioned, and I worked in Idaho for a while, and there I used to see that water banking is very popular, and leasing of water is very popular. So you take the water, you are doing the leasing with the state agency, the water bank, and you are saying that, well, for 2 years, I will have access to this. So leasing is not just for 1 year. Leasing can be for multi-year. So I put a categorical variable 2 for multi-year. And then there are the important variable called the type of transfer. I again had to put dummy variables because I had to indicate which is the direction of transfer. Has agriculture transfer 1 to 1, agriculture to urban 2, and so on and so forth. I just put categories. So this actually took at least 1 or 2 months for me to just adjust that whole Excel sheet into what I needed from the data. And actually these had thousands of observations. I came up with, you will see, and I will just go with to the number of observations here, the summary statistics, 977 observations in total. So my sample had 977, which is far less than what the UC Santa Barbara BREAD data set originally had. I should, before I forget, I should mention these, that I was in correspondence with a researcher who had actually compiled the whole data set in the BREAD data set. He's actually from Oklahoma. Yeah. So he was based in Oklahoma. Then he moved to California and then started his PhD at the UC Santa Barbara. So he, along with a very celebrated economist in California, Gary Libeka, had I think his dissertation advisor. Both of them kind of compiled that. So he was. I have his name mentioned in the paper. So so he has been very generous in telling me why this is happening, and some of the reasons is because I had to throw off observations where, and this was unfortunate that some people agreed on a lease, but they did not carry out the lease the next year. So many of these were just zeros, right? In that way, it took me a long while to clean up the spreadsheet, and I eventually come up with these 977 observations. And this is some of the summary statistics. one of the things, and obviously these are, you can see the volume of water traded and the prices over there. So I adjusted the price to $2,010. This is called a price adjustment based on inflation index. So all of us actually, when we do all these economic studies or any financial studies, as you may be aware, or any other study, we have to index the price because we have to take a base here. Otherwise, all the prices will come from every year, every possible year. And then I had the population from each state. And I pull up the states in order. And this is interesting. This table would be interesting because, and I will just focus on some of the numbers here. You see those lease prices and the sell prices in the drought and the no drought scenarios. So the drought represents those years where we had severe droughts in all the severe or exceptional droughts in all the 4 states. No drought represents that most of the 4 states had pretty much wet years. So in that kind of situation, I was trying to statistically see the difference between these prices. So I went ahead and took a summary statistics of the lease prices and the sales prices. What came up is this, and this kind of corroborates other studies, confirms, kind of supports other studies, that lease prices in the drought and no drought situation are significantly different from each other. I did the statistical test. You see the $639.52, almost $650 per cubic meters of water sold. I'm sorry I had to do cubic meters here because that's how some of these people like it, the reviewers. But in United States, I think, I forget how many gallons are there in a cube. I think it's either 1,000. I really am forgetting the conversion. But usually I would have written dollars per gallon, but I'm just putting it in cubic meters. So almost $650 per cubic meter for the lease of water during the drought. No drought, half of it, almost half of it. That's strange because if you see the sales prices, they're consistently similar. So that makes me think that sales may not be as much driven by droughts. Though my drought variable is significant, sales, a lot of sales may be just going on. Okay, right now, many of the cities in California or some entities might just be exchanging water because they need the water. Okay, so this was some of them. As you can see, I have a lot of sales data in my data set. I have 308 sales to the urban sector compared to 233. So what I did was, and I can take you back to my tables of huge statistical estimations, but I thought this is not going to interest the general public. So, and that's for publication and this thing. I wanted to just show the main results, okay? And so that we don't waste time talking about the significant results. All the results you see here are statistical. So I'm saying that, okay, so I will go back very quickly to those 2 sets of equations. Remember the first equation, I had regressed price on all the other variables. I was saying that how is price influenced by income and housing prices and drought, etc. And then I talked to the estimated value of price and put it in the bottom equation. So first, let's look at the first equation. What are the things coming up from that estimation of the price equation? So these are the interesting things coming up. And again, many of these supports other studies. It's not that I'm doing, obviously something very new here. But one of the things I came up with here in this project is like when the duration of lease is going up. So for example, if you're leasing for more than a year, prices are going up. And this, again, I thought about it and went back and I checked some of the data and I'm like, why is the duration so important? Though lease itself is showing lesser price as compared to a sell price, a sell of a right, water right, why is the duration so important? Then I thought about all the western states in my data. I have Arizona, Colorado, California, and Texas. In all these prominent western states, and these are more or less very large states, the water transactions have been, have been historically done in or tied to some of these water rights, where people are very, like you have Native American rights, stuff like this in Arizona and also in California, in Texas. So people are very tied to their water, okay, as a right. So they do leasing. They may even do a leasing for 2 or 5 years,
But unfortunately, they do not want to temporarily lease to a water bank or something like that. They don't want to give us water to just a random person for a year just because I need the water. This is a trend which might be driven by some of the state effects, okay, the kind of states I have where water is very precious, okay, clinging to your water right is very precious. So this was one interesting, and drought intensity, of course, had a statistically significant effect. So the higher the drought level, that intensity, the higher the price of the water being sold. Of course, this is not surprising that income and housing prices will always raise the price of transfers. Now, next we come to the second stage. This we call the second stage. So we do it by steps. Again, as I said, it's not very difficult to do this. Once you use the statistical software, you just write the code and it automatically comes into 2 stages. The first stage showed us about prices. Let's look how estimated price in every other variable like drought and cells and population affect the quantity of water in trade. So that was the theme of my research here, and I found out that from supporting other studies that drought really has statistical. Okay? So even though many people these days with other sophisticated models said that drought may not have had the desired impact on water transfers in recent years, but at least for my data set and for my study, I found a statistical significant impact. So that's saying a lot that we need water when there is drought. Okay, the trading of water is essential sometimes when there is drought. So that's what the research is saying. And of course, the multi-year leases and permanent cells obviously affect. So what I'm saying is when the duration is high and the water right is actually transferred, more water is used. Whereas if someone is just transacting for a year, it's less water. So obviously you understand the implications, because if you're doing it for a year, you may not trust the person. Okay, it's a market, right? And one of the things I was reading involving water market these days, very sophisticated computerized smart markets, is most of the time people are not, they do not trust the seller or the buyer. Buyers and sellers sometimes do not trust each other. And so sometimes these kind of, psychological problems arise when you have trade. And the other things are pretty much obvious. One of the things I noticed is year. The year variable is a time-specific variable. It is just going down. It has a negative value. If I show you the tables right now, you will see negative value all over. Why is year a negative value? It seems that the volume of water is going down, though the number of trades have increased. So, but I should also remember that this data I have my data set ended in 2030. Okay? So we have come along all the way from 2030. We have 5 more years that have passed. So I really an extension would be just, if we have data, we can actually add what is going on in the water transactions. Though I must note the limitation here is there was this consulting firm that was, I think their name was, I forget the name, it started with S. This consulting firm was actually publishing the data for research, for consulting, for private agencies, for water agencies, and they stopped publishing this data after 2010. So what I did, I took their data until 2010, and then I had to go to another agency, Wastewater Research, who have headquarters in Idaho, and they gave me, like they directed me to some reports, but they are a consulting agency. They just straightforward wrote me an email that we do not actually sell, or we are not willing to give our data, provide our data to individual organizations or universities, unless it is to what agency or a city. Okay, so they refused to sell the data to me. I mean, I was willing to pay them because I had the grant money a little bit, but they just said that we can direct you to reports where we have some published data. So that constrained me a little bit. I don't know if someone can solve that problem with them, if the whole university leasing or something licensing. But anyways, so that kind of is the summary of my research, and I didn't want to bore much. I mean, that's what all is going on. Droughts do affect volume transfer. So the next step I did was I did a little bit of calculation. This is done through the dependent variable is 1 or 0. This is a different kind of modeling you have to take. It's a probit model where I am asking, well, does the probability of drought intensity really affects the probability of a water transfer being a lease or a sale? So what I found out, so the question is like this, that does drought affect the probability? And if you understand probability is what? 0 to 1 number, right? So it is not a numerical number like 25 or something. So 0 to 1 number can only be captured by a different kind of model, and we use either the logic model or the probit model. Logic, I just took the probit assumptions because my data was thankfully not really distributed. So you have to use the logic model when it is logistic. But anyways, so sales and leases really did nothing significant, statistically significant result came out. I put that report, my table in the paper, but really there is nothing much significant here. And if the results are not statistically significant, all of us here in this presentation, we know that it's not really worth talking about it so much. And part of the reason is, and one of the reviewers was very adamant about the fact that I should put in institutional characteristics of governing water transfers, because it's difficult to do that. So I think what they were trying to point out is, some states have different institutional structures, so that California might support a sale of a water right. Texas may not support sales. Okay, Texas might only want leasing of water rights. So this kind of institutional structure, if you do not throw these in the model, might be your results cannot be very specific. And maybe that my paper is suffering from that, and that I put down limitations out here. And also some of these papers have claimed that, some of these leasing or sale depends upon the climatic factors. And the only climatic factor in my data set has been the drought intensity. So if you pull in precipitation and all those hydrological things, which I avoided, a lot of scientific things, and I had to finish this project in 1 year. I did not want to just go here and there and work with an interdisciplinary team, which I should be. I mean, all this research that I've been doing is interdisciplinary, but the thing is, sometimes if you want to throw in those scientific variables and you want to have a lot of discussion with scientists, you just end up wasting a lot of your time because people are always busy. So to be very honest, so my discussions and conclusions from this project is like, well, if you just strictly think about drought and water trading, yes, I had some good results. I'm showing that, well, drought do affect significantly, affect the price as well as the volume, and it seems that people tend to prefer more volume than less volume when it comes to leasing. So more volume in the sense that, well, I would do the lease for 2 or 3 years rather than 1. And this is very much related to what we see in industrial organization in economics. It also comes up in managerial economics and management classes that if you enter into duration contracts with people, the transaction costs good. So instead of doing, you pay a little bit every year, but instead of doing 1 year and then waiting 3 years and doing it in the 4th year, why don't we do a 4-year lease? It's kind of like that. So they have this kind of a duration contract. So what are the kind of extensions I want to do on these? I am still being stuck in here, because my results are showing that, well, sales and multi-year leases are prominent. Okay, I'm sorry about that spelling over here. Extreme drought situations have often led agriculture farmers to sell, S-E-L-L, not S-A-L-E. So please pardon me for that. I guess before you put it on the record, I should change that a little bit. Sell their water rights to the urban sector, enter into long-term contractual leases with environmental or municipal agencies. What has happened here is probably, and what my results are showing is like, though leases are very much desirable these days, people want to lease things rather than sell their rights. What has happened, and I have noticed even in very recent papers, is like farmers are just, they are, and we all heard this in the news, California drought of 2016. Many farmers just lost dollars, thousands and thousands of dollars. So in that case, they have been compelled to sell their rights to cities. Cities pay them, though they did not like it. Some farmers did not, but most of them had no choice because you take so much water to grow your pecans and some stuff, and then the prices are not so high. Okay, so what do? It's an economic thing. What do? You just want to sell off your rights and get the money, and at least avoid that drought situation right now. So in 2016 drought, in the extreme drought of 2016 in California, and I was reading their report that many of their lands they temporarily fallowed. Fallowed means that they did not do anything for 1 or 2 years. They did not grow any crops. So maybe that's something that is being reflected in the 2010 my data set that many of these droughts, and you remember in 2001, 2002, the country really had some droughts. In the late 90s, it carried on in the early 2000s, some severe droughts in states like Texas and California. So this is just some of the economic ramifications of the droughts that I just discussed. So I'm trying to, like my next set of research, I'm trying to really tease out data based on groundwater and surface water trading because, some economists just like to work on surface water because it's easier. I was in this workshop in summer where the Oklahoma Water Resources Board is trying to come up with some ideas to do in-stream flows. How to manage in-stream flows, meaning that Illinois River, we need to preserve the flows in the river. So Oklahoma is maybe one of the 2 states in the country which does not have in-stream flows regulation. So in November this year, they're going to have another public workshop. I will not be able to attend, but if we attend these kind of workshops, what we are actually interacting with the government agencies on how they are implementing these. One of the things that came up in the workshop is actually selling water to Oklahoma Water Resources Board. Can some agencies here in the Tahlequah region sell or enter into negotiations with the Oklahoma Water Resources Board on how they can manage in-stream flows? So that's also kind of an environmental rights, right? So that is also part of our transfer of rights. So, but this is important because we're talking about surface water. It's Illinois River. So things are not so clumsy. What about people using groundwater? Groundwater is linked to surface water, and things are so murky because then again, as I was telling at the beginning, you have to use spatial and temporal linkages. So let's see if I am able to work a little bit more on these things. But obviously I must, and that's kind of a conclusion. I've done early, nothing much. This is part, this was the finished project I had. As I said, the paper is now online. And you can just, I have some of the results from the paper, the tables from all these, with all the actual statistical tables in the paper. I just wanted to focus on the main points. I did not want to discuss Western water markets in general because it's just a vast topic. I wanted to tease out some of the conclusions of my own research from that area. And I will never cease to always, put my acknowledgements to all these people I have been collaborating, or I have worked with before, and they have been a huge influence in my life in this kind of projects. And most of them were working in Western United States, except 2 of them moved to the East Coast, taking new jobs. But as you can see, most of them are associated with this kind of climate change modeling and these water projects in Western United States. So that's it. Any questions? Anything?
It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
One question. I just wondered if the nature of the water owners, the institutions, the people that are involved in some of the trades, makes a difference in their preference for how water is traded.
Like you mean, by institutions, do you mean the water owners, mean farmers?
Yeah. Are farmers more inclined or less inclined than, say, tribal governments to lease or to sell?
Oh, okay.
In that sort of thing?
Yeah. So the nature of the transfer being influenced by the owner of the water, right? Like farmers are more willing to sell than tribal governments? Yes. To be very, like, I saw in the entire data set, to be honest, very few tribal water segments. Okay? So tribal governments have been traditionally, the nations have been either leasing their water to the bank, and individual states have their repository of information on that. So you are right, yes. If you are a farmer, a little more flexibility in selling your right because you may be having economic losses. If you have seen the cities or the municipal agencies, obviously they are the buyers mostly. They are very easy on this trading because they have the avenue, the resources very easy. They have the money and the resources. So that's what I'm going to say.
So that's kind of a general question.
Yeah.
Is there an obvious reason that this is that your research focused on the western
Yeah.
part of the
It was.
What is that obvious question
that
I missed?
I discussed a little bit before you came in. So Karen is asking the obvious reason why I focused on Western United States, because it's arid, it's dry, and not, I have also done research in the East Coast, not on water, but on climate change. But as far as I remember, none of the East Coast people have ever been, or even our Oklahoma people, have ever been so much interested in water trading. Maybe because the resources are still there. Water trading is sometimes a new concept in Oklahoma itself. But in these Western United States, they're dry, arid, and they are following countries like Chile, Australia, Spain, etc., etc. Any other questions from Broken Arrow?
Going to ask a question.
Okay.
I was going to follow up on one of your other questions that you commented on. Have you considered, or did you take into account when you did this project, or would you consider in the future working toward looking at those different institutional characteristics that govern water transfer, and specifically how does the concept of water trading, would it affect us here in Oklahoma with so many of our sovereign nations who do those water rights?
Yeah, excellent question. I have considered, and one of the things I'm trying to do is have more visibility with my work in these, being in these workshops helped me. Like if we submitted a proposal which was unfortunately not accepted to USGS in the summer, where I tried to tease out these institutional things. Like Oklahoma is a different state. We have many nations here involved. We had that Sardis Lake drama, which had many people. If you remember Sardis Lake and the allocation of water, we had the Native American people. We had the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. We had people from Texas and Oklahoma City. But we have so much institutional ramifications, and unfortunately, I've never worked on water in Oklahoma, so I'm very interested right now. And this is a future extension. I want to definitely include these. Yeah.
I've got a question as well. I know it's very specific to Oklahoma. In all your research that you were doing, did you read any information about how we're draining the Ogallala aquifer? Because Oklahoma and 7 other states actually rely on the Ogallala aquifer.
Yeah. Great question, because my dissertation was based on the Ogallala aquifer, but I took Texas as my study region. But yeah, Oklahoma is we still have the water as far as I know, and some of the research that has been done on the Ogallala aquifer in Oklahoma just looks at the allocation side, like how water is being allocated as a resource. I don't think Oklahoma has done a lot of research, if that is your question, on the trading side.
Okay.
One of the things I have noticed in general about Oklahoma is water trading is used as a phrase. Even the OWRB was talking about using water banks to transfer stream flows. But I don't know about specific studies which have actually looked at such kinds of water trading as goes on in California and Texas.
Right. And I haven't read the research recently, but it wasn't too many years ago that they were talking about, because of the Ogallala being drained and not being recharged, that has been historically, that the panhandle part of our state that grows so much wheat, cattle, they're at a loss. They're selling off. I don't know if this has come to fruition, but they were talking about selling off their land and getting out because the Ogallala is no longer going to be a viable resource.
Yes, yes. I also heard that the Western Oklahoma is never like Eastern Oklahoma at large. Like where we live, we have plenty of water. And you're correct that the Panhandle region has been suffering losses. And of course, as we know, the economics would be if you're suffering losses, if you are actually your crop prices are very low. So some of them have fallowed their land, have actually unused land. So I am not aware at this stage if the Oklahoma itself has considered water trading or anything, but I know in the Texas Panhandle and in the western parts, in the West Texas region, they have had a lot of groundwater. They have some groundwater trading things coming up because Ogallala aquifer, as you must know, that it's an aquifer, it's a groundwater. So trading is kind of, here I kind of took an aggregated data of surface water and groundwater trading, but really doing groundwater trading is slightly trickier. It's a little bit more complicated.
Thank you.
Dr. Lauterbach, here in Tahlequah, we have another group coming in at 1 o'clock. They've given me the hay sign, so I just wanted to share that with you as we get close to the hour mark.
Okay, well, if we don't have any
I think
more.
you're muted.
Oh, you're okay. I hear you.
No, we're fine. So if we are wrapping up, if there are no more questions, I just wanted to plug our next faculty council Hawk Talk. It's going to take place on November 27th at 3 p.m. and it will be hosting Dr. Mia Rebels, and she'll be talking about the northern saw-whet owls in Oklahoma. When she began studying the northern saw-whet owls, there were fewer than 10 documented records of the species for the state, and since she and her students have been systematically capturing and banding them, that number has quadrupled in the past 2 years. So if your schedule permits, please come and learn more about why these owls are so difficult to detect, as owls often are, and other information about their activities. So before we wrap it up, of course, I'd like to give everyone one last chance to ask any more questions of Dr. Ghosh. And if there are no more questions, then I would like to again extend a thank you to Dr. Ghosh for sharing her information on the economics of water trading. Very informative, very timely, important topic, especially for those of us here in Oklahoma. And yes, Dr.
I'm
Ghosh.
sorry, could you give that date again?
Yes, it's November 27th.
Oh, 7th.
27th.
Thank you.
The Tuesday after our
Thanksgiving.
big Thanksgiving break, and it will be at same place, but it will be at 3 p.m.
Thank you.
And I presume if we have other questions, we can address them to you, your email or anything like that after today. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, again, thank you everyone.
I thought you said 22nd. I was like, oh, yeah, Thanksgiving.
Thank you all for joining us. I'll close everything out here in Zoom then.
I always wanted when you gave up gluten.
The aquifer, sell the aquifers.